The story of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund.
I'm a CDF product.
Because of the bus, the girls now feel on top of the world.
From CDF to National Government CDF, what has changed?
In the new arrangement, the role of the Member of Parliament is oversight.
The brains behind the idea.
Drafted a bill, took it to Parliament.
Achievements, challenges, and areas of improvement.
The requests that we get actually much more than the resources that we have.
Welcome, I'm your host Alex Chamwada, and we begin this four-part series by looking at what the National Government CDF is all about. In the course of this series, we will sample projects in Nairobi and its environs to get a feel of the national impact. The National Government Constituencies Development Fund, NG-CDF, is established pursuant to the NG-CDF Act of 2015 as amended in 2016. The objective of the fund is to address poverty at grassroots level and enhance regional equity in development by setting aside a minimum of 2.5% of the national government share of annual revenue towards the fund.
That means, for example, last financial year, that's 2019-20, we were allocated 41.7 billion shillings. That dictates that the government can allocate more in the new year, but it cannot allocate less than that amount. That one ensures that resources are set aside to other fund. And out of that amount, the law again has got a provision to ensure that that money is channeled towards grassroots development. That means only a maximum of 5% is set aside for the national board for the purpose of administration of the fund across the 290 constituencies.
Currently, the funds are shared in equal proportion among all constituencies.
That means for this particular financial year is approximately 107 million per constituency. And once that money is set aside, it is the responsibility of each constituency committee in liaison with the wananchi in that particular constituency to identify project proposals, which shall then be submitted to the national board for review and approval.
We always receive enormous number of proposals, but we come back, we sit as a NG-CDF committee where we scrutinize those projects proposed for funding to ensure that they fall within the national government functions, that is within the security sector and the education sector.
The NG-CDF Act of 2015 is a successor to the repealed CDF Act of 2003. The fund is managed by the National Government Constituencies Development Fund Board.
The board of directors, or the board that runs the NG-CDF, has certain key functions. One is to receive project proposals from the constituencies, because every constituency has certain prioritized projects to be undertaken in the areas. So they develop their proposal and bring to the board for consideration and approval before they are allowed to carry on. The other thing is that it's the function of the board to disburse resources from the National Treasury to the respective constituencies, depending on what allocation there is that is going to be available to every constituency. The third thing is that the board also does the monitoring of the projects to see that they are being implemented as expected, and also seeing to the efficient utilization of the public resources that have been disbursed to the constituencies.
The National Treasury releases funds to the NG-CDF board through the State Department for Planning. The board distributes funds to the National Government Constituency Development Fund committees on the basis of approved project proposals. NG-CDF makes payments in form of grants to the project management committees through the National Sub-County Treasury.
Indeed, the law requires that at the end of every financial year, each constituency committee must submit financial statement to the Auditor General. So each constituency is now audited independently. And if at all there are any questions about how funds were utilized, then each constituency is held accountable. The board has employed and deployed a fund account manager in every constituency, who is the person who is accountable, of course, through the committee.
We normally go to the communities. Machakos Town constituency is composed of 7 wards, and each ward should have a representative. So the process of getting the CDFC committee members, it starts from the people, and we normally advertise, we make an advert on the same, and the interested, members of the community normally apply.
In the new arrangement, the role of the Member of Parliament is oversight, unlike the case used to be before. In the earlier years, the Member of Parliament was the implementer of the projects on the ground. And there is now the creation of the oversight role and the implementation role. So the Member of Parliament his role in these projects is oversight, because he's a member of the Constituency Oversight Committee that oversees that the projects are done, and there is value for money, for example, in the way the projects are being implemented.
Where we play a role is when we hold barazas with the people at the time of deciding which project should be given priority. So we still play some role, though limited, to mobilization, decision making with the people, and oversight.
The oversight institutions are the National Assembly, the National Assembly Select Committee on NG-CDF, the Constituency Oversight Committee, the Special Fund Accounts Committee, and the Public Investment Committee.
And the fund manager spends money or approves expenditures based on approval given by the Constituency Committee. Therefore, the two jointly they are held accountable for proper use of the funds, and they are independently, if need be, invited to appear before the Special Fund Account Committee of National Assembly to answer questions about utilization of the fund. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that there are proper structures to ensure that the people who have been charged with the responsibility of managing the funds are held accountable. In fact, the National Board, through the Chief Executive Officer, is only held accountable for the component that goes to the board that I said is not more than 5%. So the responsibility is shared among the spending units, which is the 290 constituencies and the National Board.
Kandui Constituency Member of Parliament Wafula Wamunyinyi is the chairperson of the National Assembly Select Committee on NG-CDF.
We filed reports to the National Assembly as and when necessary regarding disbursements from the Treasury to the board, disbursements from the board to the constituencies. And we give updates to the National Assembly when there are challenges in the operations or any reports that may be required by the Assembly.
Let's shift gears now, and in order to put into perspective the projects that are eligible for the NG-CDF, the history of the fund is important.
Constituency Development Fund that was instituted year 2003-2004 was the vehicle that was used for development projects covering all spheres of development in the country, be it education, health, water, and all those things. But come 2010, you are aware that we had the new constitutional dispensation, when we had the new constitution coming into place that created the two levels of government, the national and the county government, meaning that certain functions were devolved and would only be handled by the county governments, and there are certain functions that remained to be handled by the national government. Therefore, the old vehicle, the Constituency Development Fund that was there before, that covered all development projects, could not be applicable in the new circumstances. Hence the creation of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, which is the vehicle that implements non-devolved functions. And that is the difference there is between NG-CDF and the CDF of the early years.
Engineer Muriuki Karue, who served as a Member of Parliament of Olkalau constituency between 1997 and 2013, and later became Senator for Nyandarua County between 2013 and 2017, is the brains behind CDF. He says his idea was informed by lack of funding for development at grassroots level.
When you look at the way things were then, and they may not have changed very much even now, is that our socio-economic setup was kind of upside down. What I mean is, Kenya had first-class universities. You look at our universities are commensurate with any other universities anywhere in the world. But in the same country, there are children who are of school-going age, primary school age, but they are not going to school simply because there is no school to go to. CDF comes in to fill that gap, provide the primary school, some places the nursery school, where children can go to. Kenya has first-class, world-class hospitals, for example. If you look at our level 6 hospital, the likes of Kenyatta Hospital, the likes of Aga Khan, Nairobi Hospital, and so on, they are top class, commensurate with any others anywhere in the world. Yet, children will die, or people will die in their localities simply because there is no dispensary. There is no clinic down there. CDF is coming to fill in that gap. So in short, CDF came to bring grassroots infrastructure. That is what CDF is about.
Engineer Karua introduced the bill through a private member's motion.
I therefore sat down in my study at home, drafted my original, it was a motion, then drafted a bill, took it to Parliament. Initially it was my idea, but it's good for Kenyans to understand once I sold the idea to Parliament, then it was no longer mine, it belonged to Parliament. Parliament bought the idea and passed it. Once Parliament passed the bill, the CDF bill, the Constituency Development Fund bill, it again no longer belonged to Parliament. It now belonged to wananchi.
Engineer Karua's original motion advocated for 5% of the national budget to go into CDF, but this was slashed to 2.5% by the National Treasury.
If you look in Schedule 4 of our Constitution, it also goes ahead and gives which sectors are in the national government and which ones are in the county government. Now, some of the things which were CDF was across the board, didn't matter. But you see now when the new constitution came, education, primary schools, secondary schools were put under national government. So now, in the wisdom of the people who were in Parliament then, they put CDF only with things which are to do with the national government. Whether that was a good idea or not is neither here nor there. I think we respect their wisdom. And therefore they put in NG, meaning national government.
Development projects in 290 constituencies have been funded to the tune of 318 billion shillings since the inception of CDF in 2003, with education being the biggest beneficiary.
Not less than 72% of our annual allocation in every constituency goes to education sector, and this one has contributed to enhancement in enrollment rate.
In the 2018-2019 financial year, education took about 72% of the funds, followed by security at 6.8%, while administration took 6% of the funds. Others are sports, environment, and emergency.
Last financial year, for example, we had 30 million plus for bursaries. We allocated about 25 million to secondary schools and about another 20 million to primary schools. And other projects, security and the other projects, including the offices that we are standing in front, took another 20 million.
Within the last financial year, the whole amount almost went to education, because we had only one project for security, which we gave 1 million.
In the financial year 2019-2020, the Katon constituency received an allocation amounting to 137 million. Out of this, primary schools were allocated an amount of 30 million, and secondary schools were also allocated 30 million to do several projects, and also our security institutions, we were able to allocate them an amount of 30 million.
Resources under the NG-CDF Act cannot be used to support recurrent cost of a completed project, projects supporting political bodies or political activities, projects supporting religious bodies or religious activities, personal awards either in cash or in kind, and projects targeting a limited number of people to the exclusion of others.
If at all there is misuse of funds in constituency X, then the fund manager in charge of that constituency, who is the holder of the authority to incur expenditure, hence the accounting officer, is held accountable in person and is summoned to appear before National Assembly in person to explain the utilization of the fund.
We have prioritized digitization of our functions so that we work more using modern technologies, so that we are able to, for example, to monitor even without having to physically visit projects that are being undertaken. We can take advantage of technology to be able to monitor and ensure that projects are delivered in a timely manner and at a value for money to the public. And the other thing is that we want to increase transparency so that even members of the public who are out there can be part of the oversight of the projects that are being undertaken.
Public participation in selecting projects to be funded is key, and this is anchored in Article 27 of the NG-CDF Act. Generally, community participation is a key principle in governance and is provided for in Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya.
Actually, the law requires that once every 2 years, the chairman of each constituency committee must call public to come in an open forum and say what they want to do. And based on that information, the board has also provided guidelines to constituencies to use that information to prepare a 5-year constituency strategic plan to guide utilization of the funds, to ensure that and that one has to be prepared in a consultative way to ensure that the information that is there, that is guiding how funds are going to be spent, is coming from wananchi themselves.
With that, we come to the end of the first documentary in our 4-part series on the national government CDF. Next week, we will delve deeper into education as the biggest beneficiary of the fund. Many thanks for watching.